Hey everybody, this is BL Blankenship. Welcome to the show, and we are glad to have with us David Whalen. David, you are the CEO of Correct Handed Comics. You've made quite a few. I've read several of them, and they're really good. I like them. The art style's nice, the storytelling, the pacing, everything about it. I liked it. Now, let me just come at you with this first because it says correct handed, and I do believe that that's a left hand. Are you left handed?
I'm left-handed. Yes, I'm
Okay.
correct-handed.
Yeah,
Yes.
I am right-handed, but I draw
Wrong-handed.
like I'm left-handed, which
Yeah.
I'm that awkward. I like walk in entrance or blah, I walk in exit doors and out entrance doors. I'm just that kind of person. And my wife said she thought it was so cute when she met me, and she still does. But if that makes any sense to you, that I hold my pen with my right hand like a left-handed person would if they were doing
Oh, yeah.
that. That's the natural way for me to hold it, and I've had that my whole life. Are you left-handed? And it's like, no, I can't write with my left hand, or as you call it, your correct hand. We're not going to deliberate that here today. We're just gonna point out the fact that you can draw, and I mean, and shoot, Paul McCartney, he's left-handed. The left-handed guitars are cheaper. If I had
They
heard
are. I've got a couple of them.
somebody that was they were in some show and they were trying to play the banjo, and it was a left-handed banjo, and they said, I'm not left-handed. They said, can you play the banjo? And they said no, and they're like, well, then shut up, you're going to learn left-handed.
Yeah.
But okay, so when did you initially get interested in comics, like, period? Because obviously you have a love for it, that's why you're doing it in your life.
Oh,
What comic was it that drew you in and all that?
it was very early on, like so many in my situation. I grew up reading Archie comics. Archie and Veronica and Betty and Mighty Mouse and the old key Walt Disney comic books. My
Yeah.
brother and I would ride our bikes about 5 miles from our house when we were in our probably 9 or 10 years old. And we would go to this little shop called the Coin Shop, and it was one of those shops that had all these expensive coins and baseball cards and everything. So there was like a big cage that you had to go into, and then you had to ring the bell, and he'd open he'd come and buzz you in from the cage. It was always super, super creepy. But every time I went in there, he would have, I don't know where he got them from. He would have a new stack of old from like the 50s and 60s. This was probably early 80s, 82, 83. But he would have always have a new stack of these old key comics and Archie and Veronica and all those things. And I would pick up, and they were 5 cents. So I would pick up five or six of them, and my brother and I would go. My brother liked baseball cards. He'd pick up baseball cards, and we'd go around the corner to the shop, this little shop that had milkshakes and hamburgers. And he'd look at his baseball cards, and I'd read my comic books, and from there the love began. From there, I grew into Marvel and DC and superheroes, and never stopped.
That's excellent. So how long have you been, like, actually creating comics for? When did that begin?
Sure. So in elementary school, my buddies and I would all say, "Hey, let's write a comic book," and we'd get it all together, and we'd have the characters and story. And by three or four panels, they'd all be out doing so. Like, okay, let's go do something else. I'm like, oh no, we got to finish this book. So I would sit there and I would finish the book, and I walk up to, "Hey guys, I finished the book," and they're like, "Oh, that looks great, great job, great job." So they would always get bored with it within 15, 20 minutes of doing it, and I sat there for hours finishing it. And so I always grew up drawing comic characters, and getting in trouble for drawing, the characters all over my math homework and all that stuff.
Amen.
And as I grew up, yeah, yeah, as I grew up, it never left, and I always knew that I wanted to write and draw comics. Once I got into I'd say my late 20s, after I'd gone to school and I was teaching at that time, I really felt that I could put on paper what was in my head at that point. So I started looking for really small press companies to be able to draw, one shots or an issue here, or something for an anthology. And I did that for about a year and a half and said, oh, okay, I think I got it. I'm gonna start putting together my book that I've always been wanted to do,
Was it
and
anything
started putting it
noteworthy? The people that you made them for, was it anything like noteworthy?
together.
Like,
I did a few short, like 6 or 7 pages for that ended up in anthologies that I don't think went anywhere. They were trying to do, because they had the one that I did a few things for, was trying to put together like a Crisis on Infinite Earths type crossover between the 4 or 5 books that they had. So I did a few of the filler pages that kind of help explain the story, and that was probably 10 or 11 pages. And I did a first issue of a superhero from Nigeria that did see the light of day. I don't know how well it sold or if it sold at all. But after that, I never saw anything else from them. I think, like a lot of small press, you're trying to get together the funding and the talent and the everything. It's very difficult
Who was
to be
that
able to.
for?
I'm not going to say the name of the company.
Okay, that's totally
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, and I've talked to a small press before as a writer and everything, and I mean
Mhm.
uh, it's different. It's all over the map.
Yeah.
You know, it's like
It's very
I
difficult.
played in music. There's some like bands that only like want to practice, 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 but they don't do anything. And I'd rather do
Yeah.
something while other people are talking about doing it. And you're that way too because you've got a bunch of comics out.
Yeah, yeah, lots of well, with the small press, like I said, it's very difficult if you're not in a position to do most of the legwork yourself, or maybe even all of the legwork yourself. Then it's very difficult to get people. No one will like your thing as much as you like your thing. So if you don't have the ability, or you're a writer but not an artist, or an artist but not a writer, it's very difficult for that thing to see the light of day if you don't have the funding behind it. So I'm very lucky that I am a one man band, that I do everything myself. So I have the ability to not only create the characters, but write the stories and draw the sequentials and color and letter and publish it, to where I can put out a good amount of books in a year, and it's super fun.
How long does it take you to put out like a single comic?
So one issue of the Offspring, my flagship title, it will take me about 2 months from thumbnails to pencils, inks, colors, and letters, and then getting it published. Actually, getting together to get it all published, the actual PDFs and the documents to get it all covered published only takes about an hour and a half once you have everything scanned in. So that part's actually now. At the beginning, that was probably one of the trickiest parts, but now that's probably one of the easiest parts. I'd say, yeah, about a month to put together one issue fully colored and lettered and then published. For some of my titles, like my one shots, I can get those done in a month because I don't have to color them. The coloring takes for anybody out there that knows, coloring takes a long time. So with those one shots being black and white, it's a little bit faster turnover.
Are we talking about computer coloring or coloring by hand?
Coloring by computer.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right. Yeah, because then
yeah.
you scan them and you put them in Photoshop or whatnot, and then there's all that. Do you work in layers when you're coloring?
Sometimes I do. Usually I'll have a layer behind, and then I'll be kind of working. I bet that I color a lot in a lot different way than a lot of other people color, but it works for me. I try to go for a. There are a lot of books out there that are very like dark and brooding, and lots of like saturated colors. I try like when in my brain, I'm picturing the tone of like an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation,
Okay.
where it's a very bright atmosphere. The tone or the theme of the book might be a little bit darker, because there are a lot of dark episodes in all the Star Trek series, but it's always under that backdrop of a bright future. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah,
So
it totally
so
does. I've
I
seen
try
every
to.
episode, by the way.
I've seen it a million times.
So,
So I
so
try to balance that between colors that are very not in your face bright, but optimistically bright, with the darker tones of the book.
and this is an off the subject question, but since you're so into Star Trek: The Next Generation, did you not love it that the last episode of I'm believing it's season one. My memory's pretty good, but it was the last episode of whatever season. I think it was one that it
Mhm.
turned into like a horror movie where you had these things that were in people busting out their necks and all that. Do you remember what I'm
Yeah.
talking about?
Oh yeah, the enemy within, was that the name of the
I
episode?
think that was
Yeah.
amazing. I think was season
Yeah.
two the one that ended with the Borg.
I think that it was. Yeah, no, it
Yeah,
was season
it
two. I
might have
think
been
was
three.
season two was the one with the guy in the neck and the that guy who had. And I remember he had those big jowls, just naturally big jowls.
Yeah,
Um, and then season three, I believe, was the board. Gosh, I think we're right, but I'm not 100%
okay.
positive. But yeah, the I love those episodes that just came out of nowhere and then never said anything again about it.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
like, okay. these little bugs, they're gone now. Who cares?
Yeah, and I love the Borg on Star Trek. I
Mhm.
thought that was fantastic writing. It was a great enemy. I love that my favorite character in the Next Generation, Q,
Oh
was
yeah.
the one that
Oh
introduced the. He's such a jerk. I love that he introduced
yeah.
them to the board, and just the whole shebang with that. I like the episode on Enterprise where they like had an episode where the Borg came, what, to Antarctica or whatever.
Mhm.
It was cool and all that. But back to your comics. So you've written some one shot short stories. Now I just read the is it Can or Will Aliens Do My Homework?
Will aliens do my homework?
Will
Yeah.
Aliens Do My Homework? That
Mhm.
that was a cool short story. It was nice. I liked the pacing in it. Everything about that was pretty awesome. You get the whole alien invasion thing and a teacher that actually cares about her kids. I've had a few of
Mhm.
those. And then I've had some that were like, who cared? I got held back in the first grade. Um,
Yeah.
I made it, graduated early and all that, but got
Mhm.
held back in the first grade because I was hyper. We're gonna say that I had like an overly developed like social skills, but this teacher would sit there and read like romance novels the whole time, and it's just like, who cares? And
Yeah.
I got in first grade, and I'd like tip my desk over and throw pencils at kids and scream, "I'm Batman!" and Thundercats ho, and just
Yeah.
all that stuff. I had all the He-Man stuff and everything too, so that probably worked its way in. The next teacher was amazing. She's like, "Hey kids," and she'd pull out her guitar and have us get in a circle and do a sing. Yes, you know what I'm talking about. And do a sing along. One of the ones that I was given as a gift was Stinkor, and the thing about him was he was like a skunk man, and it stunk.
It stunk. It stunk really bad.
That was
My
it's,
parents were like, "Put that back in the box." I'm
yeah.
like, "No, you can't put it back in the box. It'll
I
do that. It'll be bad."
loved Shady Lady that I read of yours as a one shot. I think that you could do more with Shady Lady. I think she could have her own series. I think that she had these start with the Jedi mind trick thing, no, you are going to do this. You do want to
Mhm.
do this, kind of thing going on. She's just, I mean, going full like military martial arts, whooping people.
Mhm.
She has the antisocial personality disorder. That's what they call that. That
Yeah.
the whatever his name is, the Iceman. He was a serial killer, and he was asking what was
Yeah.
wrong with him. And they said, but firefighters and policemen also have that. It just means that you can walk towards gunfire. So that could be bad or that could be good, how you utilize it. But it means that there's danger ahead, and you're not going to freeze and freak out. That you're just like
Mhm.
game on, and going to
Yeah.
go ahead and do that. So, I mean, I thought that character had all of those elements in there. And I even said in my review that it reminded me of like the type of person that you had in the M. Night Shyamalan series. Have you ever watched those?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I love those movies and how they did the whole superhero thing and all that. But you've got
Mhm.
other heroes, and your baby there is the offspring.
Mhm.
Um, tell everybody about that. How many are there right now? And you're going to write more.
Yeah, so I just finished season 2, what I'm calling season 2, issue 25, and I'm gonna do 50 issues. So for in the whole big span of things, 4 seasons. I have Omnibus number 1 collecting issues 1 through 13, and then Omnibus 2 collecting 13 through 20, 14 through 25, collected as big trade omnibuses, as well as the extra, the smaller trades of each individual storyline, that are connected to the big broader story. But yeah, so I've been working for about 7 years on The Offspring. It's the one I've had since I was, everybody in my positions got that story where they had the one story since they were 17, 18 years old, and they've been constantly writing it and fixing this and putting this here and adding stuff here and taking away stuff here. So that for me, that's The Offspring. And this, when I started it, I wasn't sure how long I was going, or I wasn't sure how long I was going to be able to do it. So I tried to like scale down the story a little bit, and then once I got started, I realized that nothing was ever going to stop me from getting to 50 issues. So even if I lost my hands in a crazy accident, I would like learn how to draw with my feet so that I could finish the story, because I enjoyed it so much, and
Yeah.
because it was very much turning into what I had imagined in my brain of a decade of writing these characters and these stories. So it's essentially the story of three 20 somethings who, when we meet them, they are in two of them are in the worst time of their lives. One of them's just Sarah's just getting out of jail. Another one, Vince, just had a that we learned about in later issues. Just had a pretty traumatic experience, and we meet him, and he's attempting suicide. The third character, Will, I tried to approach him in kind of a different way. He is that character who looks like he's the one that's got it all together. And then as the story continues, you start to see the cracks. You
Mhm.
start to see where he's barely holding it together. He's trying to be the strong one, the normal one, whatever that means, trying to be the one that holds everything together. But as the story goes, we start to see the cracks, and we start to see how he is just as messed up as anybody else, just as struggling just as much as anybody else would in these experiences. These three characters were all abused physically and mentally growing up. And they meet at an alternative school, and they realize that they have a mental connection with each other, and that mental connection starts to turn into superpowers that they at first can't control. So it becomes an issue of them, of their safety and other safety around them. So as they start to grow up, they start to learn how to control these powers, and then they separate from each other, and that dulls down. They realize that their separation dulls down their powers. And when we meet them again, they come back together to help a friend whose brother was kidnapped, and they knew that they could help him find his brother because of these powers that they have. So they came back together, which augmented their powers, which augmented their connection mentally to each other, which starts a big, huge open door of crazy monsters and demons and crazy people. They realize that they are a beacon for weirdness, for monsters and mayhem, and they start to understand why they're this beacon, this draw for all these crazy monsters. And it's been real fun. I'm super excited about where the story is and where it's going, and I can't wait for people to read it.
Now, we had talked about this before, and what I thought was a really interesting and powerful element about this story is that you had told me that a lot of the enemies that they come across, that I mean, maybe that they're sympathetic towards them, or it reveals something that's wrong with them, like personally. So it's like looking in a mirror, you know.
Yeah, they're definitely a mirror. They're definitely a mirror for them to look at themselves. They can see. Some of my characters, I try to, while self-aware, maybe they're hiding that self-awareness from themselves a little bit. Like maybe they're not quite recognizing the how they cause the problems in some aspects. So what I try to do is try to use the bad guys or the monsters or the whatever it is that they're battling at that point. I try to use it as a reflection of the character one of the three main characters, so they can start to recognize, oh crap, that's me. I do that. That's my problem that I need to fix. And a lot of times the problems that they need to fix because they were mentally physically abused, they're real world problems. This is not just punching a monster and the monster goes down and they're dead. This is real world problems that will take years to really remedy, if ever at all. It's something that they're going to have to live with for the rest of their life. So it's not about punching the monster and the monster goes down. It's about fighting the monsters on the inside to be able to have them quell that pain or quell that frustration or quell that fear enough to be able to just simply have what they would consider a good life. So it really, as I say, it's fighting the monsters on the outside, but also fighting the monsters on the inside.
Absolutely. Do they ever create any of these monsters, or does it just happen to be that way?
Well, there's an overarching storyline that kind of explains where these monsters come from and why they are so attached to these three in the first season, three characters, and then I add a fourth character. So my plan was to have these three characters finally start to trust each other, finally start to realize that they're on the same team, finally start to maybe open up to each other a little bit, and then I threw in a fourth character that was also part of this group, this connection. They had just forgotten her. So they, for a specific reason in the story. So throwing in this fourth character now is like the monkey wrench in the works. She doesn't trust these three people at all. She doesn't know them. She doesn't she all she wants to do is just survive her situation, her experiences, and trust anybody by pushing people away. So adding that monkey wrench at the end of season 2, and then really exploring it in season 3 has been really fun to be able to see how these 3 characters who are really starting to trust each other, and this 4th character come in and just blow it all up, break it all up. So it's again one of those things where while they're not necessarily creating the monsters, they did have a hand in it, and I won't say too much about
Okay.
that.
When do you like presume that this series will be totally finished being made?
50 issues. 50 issues.
No, no, no. I mean like time
So I
wise, like
oh
years down the road,
let's so I just
ballpark.
finished issue 25, and it took me about 7 years to do that. But the last couple of years I've been able to speed up just because I'm getting better at the process and getting it all done. I am right now in the process of finishing up the last probably 30 pages of my next 100 plus page graphic novel. So I finished issue 25 of The Offspring at the beginning of summer, and I said I'm gonna hold off on season 3 for a minute, even though I know exactly what's happened. I'm going to hold off on season 3, and I want to get another one shot out. I had a story that I was really excited about drawing, so I said I'm going to get that next 100 plus pager graphic novel done, and I'm hoping, fingers crossed, to be able to have that out by March. So starting off season 3 in March, April of The Offspring, I would say that I can get 50 or the next 25 issues done in the next 5 years.
That's awesome. That's amazing. I mean, because really and truly, you're hustling more than many people that have a handful of people that are doing stuff. And I totally get that because I mean I've written like 20 plus books and all that. And I've had people talk to me. They're like, man, when you approach DC, you need to like write a script and all that. I have this nutsness that if I do something, I want to finish it. And if I write like a Batman
Yeah.
script, there's obviously some walls in there that I can't get around because he's not public domain. And I mean,
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, sure, I think I could write some glorious Batman stuff for this character, that character, or whatever.
Mhm.
But it would just be like no, or worse, not even answer you, which could happen. So I mean,
Silence is hard. Silence.
yeah, Zorro's my new Zorro Kills, he's public domain. So I mean, if I want to sit around and write Zorro, if you want to sit around and write Zorro, if
Yeah.
anybody watching is wanting to sit around and write Zorro, be it good or really, really terrible, it doesn't matter. You could still write it and put it out. Because he is public
That's a
domain.
great idea doing those public domain characters.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
people would either buy it or not. And I mean, and just my hope with that, because I'm trying to break in, and if they make enough money to be serialized, they will. I can draw, but not to the capacity that I feel like I would have to do it as well as I want it to be done. So there's people that I hire, but I'm strong at writing. I like to operate from a place of strength. And it's like if it happens, it happens. And if
Mhm.
somebody else sees it and says, I want you to do some work for hire, I'm totally game. I mean, I wrote out a big long list of
Yeah.
stuff. I could do Star Trek, I could do Star Wars, I could do Darkwing Duck, I could do this character and that character, and I mean, I know what things I could fall into easy, and it's diverse, but and I don't know that there's a limit, but you want it to be something that you enjoy at the same time. It's just like you enjoy doing that series, and that's what makes it so easy. If you felt like it was a job, if you felt like this was miserable, you would drag your
Yeah.
feet because we all do that. You're just thinking this is sucking the life out of me. But the characters are compelling in the story and you enjoy it. Tell people how they can go about getting that. What's your marketing plan? Amazon, yada yada yada.
Yeah. So I do most of my sales through Amazon and then through cons around the area. But if you go to my Facebook page, any social media, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, Twitter, it's not Twitter anymore, X, and you type in Correct Handed Comics, my blue hand here will pop up. And there are links to my website, correcthandedcomics.com, that have links to every book I've ever created on Amazon.com. You can get them in print and digital. And there's a bunch of extra stuff on the website, also some bio stuff about me, and soon to be some of the other creators who have helped me along the way. There's some preview pages of my next 100 plus pager graphic novel, Latent Lightspeed, which is a space epic shoot 'em up aliens and stuff like that. It's I think some of the best pages I've ever done. I'm excited for people to see it, and every single one shot I've ever done. So I know that one of the reasons I started the one shot series is because I understand that sometimes it's a little hard for people to jump on board with long term storytelling with a independent creator because you never know if they're going to actually finish the book or not. That's happened from time to time. I'm sure we both experienced that with some
Yeah.
companies.
Yeah.
So I created those one shots. It's kind of like a bridge to show people my style and my storytelling, and if they liked Will Aliens Do My Homework or Shady Lady or Sock Hop Killer or any of the other titles that I have, if they like those one shots, maybe that'll interest them enough to be able to jump into maybe the first trade, issues 1 through 4 of The Offspring. And hopefully they like it enough to be able to continue reading it. So those one shots, I think, are kind of like a bridge to be able to help people see if they like what I'm doing and continue reading it.
That's very cool. That's very nice. So these are your plans for the future. Um, if some comic company has any comic company contacted you, if they did, would you be open to doing anything like with them? I mean like a name that you've heard of. I don't mean like a small press.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the dream is always to write and draw Superman, Batman, Wolverine, and pick a
Yeah.
character. They give me the worst sell like, the story here, the brand new writer come in and they say, this is our worst selling book. You have 6 issues, do what you want. To me, that would be the dream to be able to give me a book that's not selling very well, or and to be able to just have fun with that character and be able to do something different with it and hope that it created an atmosphere where the whatever company it was would want me to continue writing for them. But yeah, I'd always be open to the company calling me up, and I am in the process of reaching out now to be able to maybe start getting my stuff on a little bit bigger of a platform. I hope to be able to have more eyes on the things that I'm creating.
Absolutely. And I've heard a lot of people say that networking at Comic Cons is cool. I have never been to a Comic Con. I've been a special guest at at a sci-fi convention. I've been at some literary conventions. I've written all these novels and whatnot. I've been at a lot of horror stuff, and you really do, as an indie author, you sell a lot more in person, especially
Mhm.
if you're good at engaging people. You're not like sitting there on your phone. You're like, hey, how's it going? And they come up and they talk, and it's like, I
Oh,
want to support your dream, man. Take my money. So I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
that's
it's
really
really
nice.
hard. Yeah, it's really hard going to conventions when I'm not tabling and I go to conventions and I see an indie creator and I walk up and I say hello and they're like this or they're drawing hey, and they look back down again. That's very difficult because I walked up because I want to have a conversation with them about them. So that's one thing that I try to make sure is a smile. It's like, come on, let's talk about comic books. And yeah, are definitely a great way to be able to get again more eyes on your work.
Awesome. Well, it was great talking to you. People need to go and check you out. It is www.correcthandedcomics.com. Super easy to remember. It has been behind you the entire episode for people to see. So super easy for people to remember and check out some of those series. Yeah, I think that that's great. And again, I think that the one shots are great. I know that within literature, what's sold well for me are anthologies, because you've got a bunch of different authors in it, and they'll buy it because they know this one, and then they'll see somebody else that they think that they like, and so it has
Mhm.
worked well for me. And I mean, and I've got things like that out on Amazon, but it's cool because it's like a sample tray of stuff.
Yeah,
But man, thank you again
yeah,
so much. I hope that you have an amazing year, and looking forward to all the good things that are happening with you.
yeah. Thank you, Ben, so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's great talking with you.
Thanks.